Hi guys, welcome back to the Writing Craft Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna.
And I am your host, Holly.
And today we're talking about tarot, and specifically how writers can utilize tarot in their writing craft.
And also a little bit about our own history with tarot, so we will get deep into all of that.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I brought like a little deck over if you're watching on video. This one I highly recommend for starters. This is more of a mythology tarot deck, so it's got different tarot for all the different mythology around the world. So I love this deck and love using it in my own personal life. And outside of that, in writing as well, because obviously I write a lot of things that are inspired by mythology, so it just kind of makes sense and flows into each other.
So my tarot, I actually use a combination, which is kind of interesting because my first deck was a druidic deck that was very like druid specific, and it came with the little book and everything, but I lost some of those cards, which in itself was a whole interesting experience, which I didn't expect, and I can get into it more later. And I wound up getting the Hermetic deck, which is really a beautiful one with like black and white designs and stuff, but I still use my Druid book, and somehow the two have just made this like incredible pairing where I always get the most accurate and intense results.
I love that for you. I definitely want to hear more about that story of, like losing your deck or some of the cards in them and how that ended up turning out, because that sounds really interesting. For me, I have a couple different decks too. This one's probably one of my favorites, but I typically end up actually using my tarot for more simple things or for questions that I have, and then I typically still have my sibling Jay take care of my like yearly and monthly tarot readings, just because I feel like I'm going to put my own, like what I want the cards to say versus what the cards actually say. So I like the outside perspective still on those things, and I still like getting other people to read my tarot occasionally. So Jay is usually the person I go to for it, but when I need it myself, or if Jay's too busy or annoyed at me because I have too many questions, they're like, you already got the answer from the cards. Stop asking again and again, hoping for a different answer. Then I'll just do it myself and, again, hope for a different answer, which is not what you're supposed to do. Don't recommend doing it, but sometimes I can't help it.
My mom actually has an interesting way. I don't know if you've heard of this. She has an interesting way of doing another reading if the first one just makes no sense. So she will take her. I don't. First of all, what kind of readings do you generally do when you're doing a reading, like the Celtic Cross or something else?
I typically do a little bit more free form, so just kind of like however the cards want to come out. I used to do like patterns and stuff, but I realized trying to force the results into a specific pattern for me just didn't really work. Versus like sometimes when like Jay's doing my reading for the year, they'll just pull out cards and we'll realize, oh, they pulled out a specific amount of cards that are for every quarter, or for every month. And it'll be complete accident, and they'll be like, oh, I pulled out 12 cards exactly, and it's 12 months in a year, so in succession, this is how they work.
Oh, that's cool.
So we typically just kind of let them flow out the way that they want to flow out.
Okay, so I that's something I want to get into a bit more, just to learn my deck better, right? And I recently spent some time with one of my best friends, and she has been taking her deck with her everywhere, and she'll just pull a card anytime she's sort of at a loss throughout the day, and it's been helping her a lot. So I kind of want to get into doing that a bit, but generally what I do is the cross. So you have the what's behind you, what's to come, and then you have the wand as well, like that sort of classic larger format. And my mom and I both do this, and same with my dad. Like I got it from them. They both do a lot of tarot, and when they get a reading that makes no sense, my mom anyway, she will take that final like what is yet to come card, and she'll use it as a signifier to start the next reading. And she actually just did one recently on this new moon, and it came out completely different and made a ton of sense. So for me, liking that sort of linear setup and the larger reading every time I do one, I'm probably going to work on that moving forward if it makes sense. But honestly, recently they make too much sense. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, that's always so interesting when the cards are like too accurate and you're like, oh, that's a little It's a little freaky.
Yeah, and I was going to add when you say about getting another opinion, because yeah, you can definitely, like, your own mind is going to influence it a lot. So I will usually, since I'm distant from, like, my dad's in another province and my mom, we lived for with each other for a little bit, but we don't now. So I'll send them both photos. I'll be like, here's my reading. What do you think? And they'll sort of have some different inputs and weighing in. But it's been a while since I had someone else do a reading, and I think I'm due for it. So hopefully next time I see my dad, because he's the one who always did my readings growing up.
That's so cool. I love that your family both, like, your parents actually are a part of that too. I think the only people in my family who do it are me and my siblings. So that's really cool to have grown up with it. We kind of entered it more so in our, separately actually in both of our like witch paths that we both kind of fell down around the same time, but completely separately from each other. And in the household we grew up in, we didn't really get to like communicate these things to each other, and then we ended up talking later and we're like, oh, we had really parallel journeys, and now we can trade things like tarot, and I can tell them a little bit more about their astrology. So typically I'm like the person who you go to for astrology, they're the one who they go to for tarot, but I love both. I just typically end up putting my own thoughts and opinions into things on accident versus they get to be very like outside of stuff. But yeah, okay, that's just so cool. Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool. And it's, that in itself has this sort of occult energy just of not being fully in contact about it, but still winding up in a similar place. I think that's really interesting when you have that with siblings. Like, I have half sisters, but they're quite a bit older than me, and we never lived together full time. But we have some things that have come up where years later we talk and we're like, oh, hey, you did that, and I also did that too. So there's just this energy with family sometimes that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's so cool. One of those things I think that happened with my sibling as well is that back in high school, they started going down their Norse pagan path, and they got really, really into it, and they still are. They have like statues, and they speak with Loki and all these other things. And that was when like my dad was adopted, so we really didn't know like where we came from on his side of the family. And on my mother's side, It was really like we only knew we were like American for like a while, but we didn't know where we came from really. And then when we found my dad's birth family, we found out they're all Scandinavian, Nordic, back from like the Viking age kind of thing. And we were like, oh, that makes sense that you'd be called to Norse paganism, because that's literally our like whole family lineage on that side is everyone's from like Sweden and Finland and Norway. And that's where our roots lie. So I'm always so interested in how all of those things connect. But on that similar note too, if we want to do each other's tarot readings later on in this episode, I think that'd be really cool. Just pull like 3 cards for each other.
Yeah, that would be great. And we can see how my my combo deck and druid info stands up, if it's accurate for you as well. I was going to add something kind of funny about growing up with tarot is you kind of understand that thing before a lot of your peers do, because as you were saying, that's something you discovered a bit later on, right, on your own. And I think that if you don't have a family that's a bunch of weirdos like mine, you're gonna sort of get into that in your teens and stuff like that. And so for me, I was this like little kid who knew about tarot, and I had family members who also had decks, like cousins and stuff. So my cousins were pretty close to me, like siblings, and their parents had a tarot deck, but they didn't respect it in the same way that my parents did. So I had this sort of priming, this like education of like, okay, you get your tarot deck, someone gifts it to you, you don't let other people touch it unless it's during a reading, wrapping it in silk, keeping it under your pillow, all of those things. So I had all of that in my head, and I would go to my cousin's place, and I remember one of them pulling out their parents' tarot deck and being like, let's play tarot, like it was a game, and sort of throwing these cards around and being like, this means this and this means this. And I was very serious about it. And I was like, no, it's not a game. This is not what you do. And I was probably like, I think I was 10 and they were 8, and they had no idea why I was being so scary about these pretty cards that their parents had let them play with.
Yeah, I think that's definitely more of the approach I go for, is like respect the cards. My siblings a little bit more like their cards are kind of like bent out of shape from use, and like, you know, they have like a bazillion decks probably, and I'm like, I have just my four little special ones. But like,
Yeah.
I'm very much respect the cards, respect what they tell you, treat them nicely and they'll treat you nicely. But I distinctly remember when I worked at the bookstore that shall not be named, there was so much theft of tarot cards because for some reason it was going around on the internet to make your tarot cards work, you had to steal them. And I was like, that does not make any sense. I don't know who lied to you, but do not steal your tarot cards. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you stole a tarot deck, return it or get rid of it. That is just bad energy. I don't know where people got it from.
Never in my life have I heard that. That is so ridiculous. Like, talk about the wrong way to start tarot. Like, the worst way.
Yeah, and like, like I was always so confused because I was like, why is our main things that are getting stolen in this store are Legos and tarot cards? Like, it's definitely not the same people. It's two separate groups coming in here for Legos and for tarot, and we just don't have any Legos or tarot because they're all gone. I would rather have you steal Legos and sell them on eBay than steal tarot decks and just have that beta energy, because we need good energy in this world. We don't need the opposite. So stop stealing tarot decks.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is still a trend anymore. This was like pre-pandemic. But if it is, don't do it. That's your PSA for this episode.
Yeah, you heard it. Yes, you heard it here. Do not steal your tarot deck. Do not.
Just ask for it for your birthday.
I guess we... I guess we could sort of talk about, you know, how you're supposed to acquire your tarot and what the general rules for it are if you sort of want to start out right and get things right. Like, what have you generally heard and what have you put into practice?
Well, definitely don't steal them. I've heard getting them as a gift is also really good energy because it's someone giving it to you with like a lot of love and feeling and stuff. Purchasing them is, again, definitely better than stealing them. Gifts are great. Obviously that only really works though if you have people in your life who are welcoming to tarot and more witchy stuff. So obviously if you're not in a position to get it as a gift from someone who is around you who'd give you a gift, then buying it yourself is fine. And then also getting it from more like local witchery kind of places if you do have access to them. If you don't, Barnes & Nobles typically have them. Just be careful if you get them from online, because like Amazon could be from like some really sketchy warehouse in the middle of like somewhere that doesn't treat people right, and that would also be bad energy for you to have. And they might not even be accurate cards if you're just trying to get them for like super cheap. So it's better to save up a little bit of money and to get them from like a more reliable source than it is to just like order some really like $5 packs off Amazon or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, don't because I've seen when I've researched decks when my cards went missing, and it's funny because I didn't realize they were missing at first, but I had just these terrible readings all the time, and then I finally counted them, and I'd moved recently, and I think I'd lost 3 cards, and I counted them, and I was down to like, well, there's normally 72 or 73. I always get it wrong.
I forget too, but I think 72?
Yeah. I think it's 72. You know what? I'm just going to look it up very quickly.
I swear we're knowledgeable.
I feel like we should get... Oh, no, we're totally off. 78. So there's normally supposed to be 78, and I think that I was at like 73 at that point. And I told my dad, and he was like, get rid of those immediately. That is why you're getting terrible readings. So these things can set you off. And when I started researching them again, I saw tons coming up on, like Ally Express and things like that on those sites. And, oh, you can get this deck that looks like another deck, but only for $1.50. And it is not worth it. You're going to welcome very bad juju into your life. And I'm lucky that I'm in Montreal, and we do have a local place called Charme et Sortilège, and I was able to just walk in there, and I looked at their tarot section, and this is sort of a good thing to do, like if you can see them in person and be faced with them, and just go with what draws you in. And I remember turning around and I saw this new one, and it was just like, it was a second, and I was like, nope, that's it, and I just grabbed it. So if you can have that kind of experience, or the gifting experience from someone who knows you and who respects the card, then those are going to be the really best ways to start.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And of course, like, it's not always possible for people who live in, you know, places that don't have access to, you know, more witchy spiritual stuff, but just do what you can with what you have. But just know that if you're going to get your stuff from a source that we wouldn't recommend, know what you're getting yourself into, and try to avoid it to the best of your abilities. I would even like wait to get a tarot deck until maybe you're visiting like a different state or a different country where you have a little bit more access to things, and just look up like local shops, ask people in the area, and do it that way versus just becoming impatient, because you don't want to put that energy out there either.
Yeah, and so if you're listening to this and you're like, oh no, I did that, don't worry, not all is lost. I don't know if you have also sort of heard this, because, so for me, I learned all of my tarot info from my parents, and I just never really looked it up again after that, because I just, you know, trusted what they did and it's worked for me. So there are ways to cleanse your deck. So if you have a deck and it's not working and it has the, you know, the bad juju and it's not good, you realize you got it from, you know, AliExpress or something like that, and you made a mistake, you can get a piece of silk and wrap your deck in the silk and put it under your pillow and sleep on it. And, you know, you can do this for as many nights as feels comfortable. I've had to reset decks. Like, my friend and I wound up sort of accidentally trading decks because we had a similar one and it just felt off. So I slept on it and now it's good. And it only took one night because it was a friend who I really care about. So, you know, it wasn't something negative. But if it keeps giving you the wrong results, if you keep feeling bad, just keep sleeping on it and see how that helps, because that can definitely reset things by sort of connecting with your subconscious.
Yeah, and I definitely think that one of the best things that you can rely on in that case is just like your intuition, because you might not know right off the bat that something is a bad reading or something is incorrect. But if you're going to your cards and you're just feeling like crap every time that you get a reading for yourself or you give it to somebody else and they just look defeated afterwards, like, they always say that like tarot is mean, and it definitely can be, but like the point of it isn't to make you feel hopeless, and it isn't to make you feel bad. It's to give you direction so that you can take actionable steps in a direction and an outcome that you want. So if it's just making you feel like garbage, there's probably something up, or there's just something really bad on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible that something really bad could be coming, but at the same time, like, when you look through any tarot guide and you start learning about it, you'll see that every card, there's sort of there's a light in there. And that's what makes it such a helpful tool, in that you're never, you know, you'll see in media sometimes where they're, you know, like TV series and stuff that aren't well researched. They'll be doing the tarot card and they're like, oh no, it's the death card. And it's like, well, death isn't actually a bad card. There are a lot of cards that can look bad or scary, but if you actually look into them, they're about different things. Like, you know, death is about deaths of certain elements and rebirth and stuff like that. And tarot is very much like, you know, Wicca and paganism as a whole, where you always have that balance and you always have the darkness and the light, and, you know, the god and the goddess, that sort of thing. And I think that tarot is a great representation of that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just like, I find a lot of people who are into more witchy, spiritual, pagan kind of things, they enjoy that duality and that juxtaposition between light and dark, male, female energy, just all of those things that, you know, are opposites but go together, and you can't have a balanced world without both. And I think tarot is great for that. And, you know, cards like the devil or death, like, they don't really mean what a lot of people think that they mean. Though I will say the caveat to that is that they definitely can. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example for this one, is that I was getting me and my fiance were getting our yearly reading from Jay. And for the first month of January, for my fiance, Jay pulled the death card, and we were all sitting there looking at it. We were like, this card doesn't have good energy today. Like, usually it just means endings, but then we were like, it's the start of a year, it's a beginning. No, I feel like someone's actually gonna die. And literally in the month of January, his grandmother died, like 2 weeks after this reading. And we were like, oh wow, that's the only time the death card has actually been a signifier of death. And we were like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we were just telling people that it doesn't always mean this, but like, I will say, if it feels like it does, maybe it is. But it might, again, just be your bias. So you have to be careful. It's not just you being scared of it. If it actually, like, you're not scared of it, it doesn't really mean that. It just means like endings and rebirth and renewal and new things coming, then okay, no reason to be afraid of it. But if all of a sudden you see the card and you're like, oh no, that's something bad, either something's up your deck or something bad is coming. So keep it in your mind.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to be said for intuition and also looking at the reading as a whole if you're doing multiple cards, because I know sometimes you can pull one card just sort of in a moment if you're questioning something and just sort of, or, to start your day. Depends how often you like pulling cards. But if you have a larger reading and you're going along, like, the kind of reading I'm talking about, like Celtic Cross, and you're like, okay, this makes sense. This just happened. This is how other people are perceiving me. It makes sense that this is what I want and this is where it's going. And then you get one card that makes no sense. Try and pay attention to what you think about that card and what you're feeling, because especially if everything else is making sense, it's saying something.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the best ways to tell whether or not it's the deck or if it's actually something that you need to be prepared for coming, to you soon, is if everything of the present and the past is lining up in that same reading, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, the future doesn't make sense. Like, oh, it will. It will later. It doesn't right now, but it will.
Yeah, just wait.
Yeah. That's why the cards can be mean, but they love you. A little bit, at least.
They're just trying to help.
Yeah, in their own little special way.
They're like the constructive criticism of the paranormal world.
Say if you don't like constructive criticism, one, you probably shouldn't be a writer. That's something you need to grow with. But two, you will not be a fan of tarot. And that's why I think, though, so many people enjoy tarot and writing at the same time, because it's literally just like constructive criticism for your life and for your future so that you can develop as a person and know what's ahead of you. And it's kind of like we as writers, especially, people who are plotters, they like seeing the road ahead to know like what to expect and what to write and other things like that. So having kind of that same roadblock for your life based off of tarot or astrology or moon phases or whatever it's going to be for you is so crucial, I feel like, for so many people. And I think that's why we're seeing a large rise in people in general being interested in all these spiritual things, but then also specifically writers and creatives, because they like having that roadmap for their creative stuff and then also for like real life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. And I think also there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and you see more people being creative and in touch with a spiritual side. And it's just like, I'm a plotter too, so it's helpful to have those notes and to be able to feel like you have a bit of control over your world, even if you are getting those things that point out to you that maybe you don't know everything that's going on. You still are like, okay, I've had a warning and this helps. Just like with, writing, it's a bit of an escape. They mesh very well together, which is why we're talking about this today.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that segues perfectly into the conversation of like, we can use tarot for our everyday life, but we can also use tarot for writing specifically. And I'd love for us to, talk and share about the ways that we can use tarot, and we have used tarot for writing, and then hopefully start maybe a discussion, in comments or, online anywhere with other people who are interested in how to use tarot for their own writing and how they do it personally, because this is like one of my favorite little hacks.
Yeah, definitely. So, for me, tarot is something I always wanted to get deeper in with my writing, but I have definitely used it in smaller ways. As someone who writes epics all the time, I always want to do everything kind of big. So I have these grandiose ideas of really working with every card in the deck. And I've even wanted to make my own deck at one point, which, side note, that is also a great way to get a tarot deck. If you really want to make it the most intensely personal deck you could make, you can make your own. It's a lot of work, but it's a very cool process, and I think that's something I'd like to do someday. But aside from my visions of grandeur where tarot are concerned, I guess I'll just start out with one, and maybe if you want to like go back and forth a little bit about how we use it, so so one of us isn't just like info dumping. So I've used it for character development and I'm a really character focused person, so I find it can be fun to draw cards to find different elements, like different aspects of my characters, like personality traits, and see if it works. Because sometimes I'll draw one, it's like, no, that's definitely not them. But even seeing that helps me figure them out a bit more. So it's just kind of this thought exercise, and it can spark inspiration for backgrounds and also hidden secrets. So that's one really fun way that I've used it before.
Yeah, I've definitely used it for the same thing, and there's actually a whole book that I know Holly wasn't able to grab, but I've had this one for a while. So This is Tarot for the Fiction Writer by Paula Chaffee Gardamala. I'm sorry for butchering that. But this one's been really, really interesting because it basically tells you like what each card can mean in different types of pulls related to your writing. So this has been really fun to utilize with character development and with plotting. And I think the main way that I have used tarot in my writing has been that I had Jay give me a whole querying process tarot reading, and it was like a lot of cards, so my querying journey is not small, I know that, you know, and I can literally like look at the different kind of phases that they pulled. So there's like a beginning, a middle, and an end. They felt like the ending meant that I do get an agent at some point, and I think I'm in like the middle part of it right now. But it's really fun to be able to look back on my 2 years of querying with Spaceborne and be able to actually see like the cards that were pulled telling me exactly what was happening at what stages and points. And now I can know like, okay, I have like a little bit of certainty knowing that like, I think in the end I will have an agent, and I can look forward to specific cards that were pulled, and we go, oh, I know that, you know, this challenge coming up and other things like that. And I have like the whole thing recorded on video. So I think one day I will have like a whole querying vlog of multiple books, however many it takes, and then put in the different scenes of that tarot reading from like 3 years ago, where I can like pull, oh, this is when this card happened, this is when this card happened. So that's been a really fun way to use tarot in my like personal writing and querying journey. And I encourage other people, honestly, to do it if you're waiting on a project or submissions or querying or whatever it may be. Just so that, one, you can prepare yourself, and then two, so you can look back and be like, oh, that's how everything connected later on.
I love that. I never would have thought of that. That's very cool. And I think that's great advice, and I'm going to do that myself, especially when it's such a long-term reading and you can go back and see as it's happening. I love that because personally, my readings are always rather short-term. I'm a full moon reader, and it's usually about my personal life when I'm doing an actual life reading. So I love using it for that. That's a great concept. I'm going to start thinking of other things like, okay, what can I do in my writing where I can do a reading? Oh, I love it.
I find it really interesting, and I highly recommend to anyone who's getting a reading, even like if it's yourself, or you're getting a reading from somebody else, to like record it so you can go back on it. So another idea I had even was,
yes,
you know, I talk about like my goals every year that I have, and then I get my yearly tarot reading. So I don't think I recorded it for this year, but this upcoming year, 2024, I'm definitely going to record my yearly reading with my sibling, and then have like an end of the year kind of like vlog of, this is this card that they pulled for this month, this is what happened that month that corresponded with that card, and then do the same kind of thing as I would with the querying vlog. That way people understand that concept and they can see it before I actually get an agent, because that could be who knows when.
Okay, so with that in mind, you had mentioned doing readings for each other. I think we should do a podcast reading at the end of this episode. And we can each draw a couple cards that's to do with the upcoming year of our podcast. And we'll see what happens, and we can check back in.
Yes, I love that idea, because then we can totally go back like a year from now and be like, oh, this is how that went.
Exactly. I think that's going to be really fun. I can't wait.
We'll definitely do that, and we'll pull cards for each other too towards the end.
Okay, perfect. I'll have to run and get my deck. So I mean that's such a great idea. I'm just sitting here like processing it, and I love it. But I'm going to so with my next thing, I also use it sort of back into the writing mode rather than the more, you know, high concept life of the writer. I do also use it for plot. where in a similar way to character, where I can pull cards that will create sort of twists or unexpected events. I haven't done it a lot in my recent stuff, but I did used to do it. I had like a role play game that went on for a very long time, and sometimes I would pull cards just to be like, what are we going to do? Let's just throw something in here. And it was really fun and kind of chaotic to do that. And if anyone here plays D&D, I am chaotic neutral, so it makes a lot of sense with the way I function. And you can also lay out cards to form a narrative structure if you're having trouble with plotting. It won't always work, but if you're trying it, aim to use major arcana as your sort of key story milestones with other cards as elements within those. So I find that can be really useful if you're stuck.
Yeah, I've definitely done that too with, character development and then with plotting. One thing that I like to do too is use it for character arcs. So I'll pull 3 cards and it'll kind of be like, this is how the character begins their journey. This is the transformative part in the middle of who they become on their journey to the 3rd card, which is who they end up by the end of the book. And it's cool because with certain characters, I can kind of like, oh, they're digressing rather than like having like a proper hero's arc. They become worse. And I find that dynamic really, really interesting in books, period. So having the cards kind of decide what character has that happen to them is really interesting. I definitely don't do it as much as... I could, but I think too, it's like, I want to control it. I don't want the cards to decide, but you don't have to listen to the cards. Like if you're like, this doesn't fit the character, or this isn't the vibe, you can always just, ignore it, decide this isn't it right now and come back to it later maybe. But I think it's really interesting if you don't know exactly what to do with a character or you're stuck with something to kind of see what the cards have to say.
Yeah, it's a really good brainstorming tool, which I find it is for, your own personal life as well. So even if you're not, so I know some people come to the cards being like, I don't fully believe in this. And a really good way to start with that, whether it's personal or with writing, is to just, relax into it, try it out, see what works for you. And if something doesn't work, put it away, move on, and eventually you'll come to that place and you'll do brainstorming and you'll figure out where the cards work for you, and that's when it starts really being a good tool for thought and creativity.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think too, even associating like your characters with a specific card can be really interesting. This was a concept that I got from Dragon Age Inquisition, actually, the video game, which I love and adore. But they have specific cards that go with specific characters, and those cards will like change throughout the game. So that got me thinking about writing in the terms of tarot a couple of years ago when I first played the game, and then I just dove deeper and deeper into it and started utilizing it more. But I love the idea, and I haven't done this yet, but I love the idea, and I will do it someday. Where you have your main cast of characters associated with specific cards, and you get like commissioned art of them with those cards, and it'd be great. It's like almost doing the same thing that you mentioned earlier of like making your own tarot deck. It's only a couple of cards in this case, but even if you have a large enough cast of characters or a large enough book series, you could literally fill an entire deck probably with cards. That's obviously a lot of money to commission all of it, but if you're good at drawing, you can do it yourself. I would love to create my own tarot deck too, and even ones of book characters would be so sick. And not I think I've seen it done maybe once for like Sarah J. Maas, but not enough people do it. And I know it's a lot of money and a lot of time, but it just sounds incredible to do.
That is definitely in line with my grandiose schemes that I mentioned earlier, just because tarot is such a wealth of creativity. It's just so inspiring that you kind of want to do everything with it. And especially like when I was younger, I liked card captors. And so I've always been attracted to that idea of the, cards saying different things and having that association with the story that you're writing, and people being able to utilize those cards as part of the journey of the story and appreciating it and stuff like that. I actually, there's this deck, and I shouldn't forget the name of it because I was just looking, I was like, oh yeah, I should mention I have tarot tattoos. and it reminded me because there's this amazing deck out there, and I'm gonna have to look it up. And I know that we'll be able to share links and stuff. So when this episode comes out, maybe I'll share a link to it. There's this amazing deck that someone came out with that you get these different symbols, and some are like dark versions and some are light versions, and it's just the most beautiful sort of designy, obscure deck I've ever seen. And I kind of want to share that because it's, I wound up getting massive tattoos of 2 of them because they're so cool. Just in terms of when you see someone craft their own deck. And this person isn't a writer, she's a designer, but she did go through and do all 78 cards, and they're incredible. Yeah. Excellent. I have mine are the Lovers and Temperance. And yeah, I don't know. So for your signifier, just to veer off of writing for a second, because we didn't really talk about signifiers. I mentioned it, but I don't know if everyone is aware of these. So with your signifier, which is like your card, and sometimes when you're doing larger readings, you pluck that out and use it as a basis for your reading. You can pick a zodiac one, but also there's this evolution as you go through readings where you'll sometimes veer off of that and you'll find your own. And that's how I wound up choosing my tattoos, because I'm Gemini, sort of, what we touched on last time about zodiac, and the card that matches that is the Lovers. But I wound up really identifying with Temperance. And it's kind of funny because when I was a teenager, I identified with the Princess of Swords, and there's just this evolution. So I don't know if you've had anything similar to that, Jenna.
It's usually the moon and star will show up like a whole lot in like all of my readings that I ever get. And I love the symbolism of both of those cards. And the moon and stars like always show up in a majority of my stuff. Like literally there's the moon and stars back there. Like I even have it on my mouse pads. Like moon and stars show up for everything with me. And they always show up in my tarot too. So I usually end up just seeing those as sort of my cards and sort of like my symbols and things like that. So they always find a way to sneak in there sometimes.
That's so cool, because I love those cards, and it's interesting how the deck can sort of personalize, because for me, like I'm drawn to that sort of, those symbols. I love the moon, I love the stars. I'm a goth, come on, I can't help it. But when it comes to actually using the deck, like you can't predict what you're going to wind up connecting with, and that's really cool to have happen, because like Temperance, I was like, is that my thing? But somehow that's my thing, and the tarot told me, and it knew better than I did.
Yeah, I would say, like, as long as your deck's working right, and everything's, going smoothly with the deck, like, the deck knows better than you do a lot of the time, and it will make you face things that you're not necessarily ready for, you didn't want to deal with, but it will tell you, hey, it's time, bestie. I'm looking at you, I'm watching you and what you're doing, and it's time to deal with this thing. And I mean, it's kind of like a therapist in that way, in a lot of ways, where it's like, hey, how are you feeling today? Too bad. We're going to talk about some shit.
Yep. It's like, you've been drawn to the deck. You know what you're in for. You might get some hard truths.
Like, white people who don't like constructive criticism also don't like tarot. And same thing, if you want to be a writer, you really have to be able to get used to that. And we were talking before we started this episode all about probably doing an episode on constructive criticism. So if you guys want that, just let us know.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to accept it. And accepting constructive criticism doesn't necessarily mean that you have to listen to it. Like, you don't have to listen to the cards and hear what the cards say. You don't have to listen to constructive criticism and adhere to all of it. But you have to be open and willing to accept what the cards have to say, willing and open to accept what constructive criticism has to say, and be able to handle your emotions when it comes to those things so that you can see things clearly. Because if you're like, no, I'm not listening to the tarot because it hurt my feelings, and then bad stuff happens, it's on you. Like, you were warned. Like, you were given ample time to fix whatever it is that's going on. And if something bad happens, now it's your fault.
And the key term here is constructive, right? Because obviously if someone's going to come along and troll you and be a jerk to you about your writing, you don't have to listen to them. Like, they might be right, but if they're wording it in a nasty way, like, you have the right to protect yourself in that sort of situation. So when we say constructive criticism, this is like, it might be a bit of a hard pill, but it's being delivered to you with good intentions. And I think that's the thing with tarot, as long as, you know, like we've said before, as long as the energy is where it should be, it is going to be with, you know, like cosmic care for you. Like, this might be a little bit tough to understand right now, or to get through, or to go towards, but you should.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no reason for you to listen to something that doesn't come from good intentions, whether it's coming from family, friends, the cards, if it doesn't feel right for you, because again, that intention. 2, if it's just making you feel like absolute garbage. 3, if there's nothing you can do about what they're saying, like, in that case, it's just someone's opinion that usually, if it's not coming from a good place, isn't meant for you. It's more so a reflection of how they feel, or it's a reflection of the cards being in a negative space or not having good vibes or good energy, in which case, like, protect your own energy and don't let it affect you in that kind of way. And it's easier said than done, but it is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, when you're dealing with anything occult, paranormal, you do have to worry about your energies, and you want to stay grounded, and you want to think on those things, because you do have to honor yourself with everything you're doing, whether that's exploring occult elements or writing or anything like that. You do want to honor yourself always.
Yeah, I love that saying. I think it's so beautiful. It's just, you have to honor yourself, your creativity, your peace of mind, just like anything that has to do with you. If you come to it from a place of love and honoring your own authentic self, then I think you're on the right path. But if you have to think about the alternative to that is you don't honor yourself, then you're not treating yourself with the best of intentions. You're not, looking at things for like hope. You're looking at things to hurt yourself. You're, allowing people in your inner circle who don't have your best of intentions in mind. Like, honoring yourself is honoring your time, your energy, your peace of mind, and every person is deserving of that. And I know a lot of people who don't feel good about themselves, don't think that they should, or don't think that they deserve it, but like, I'm telling you, you do. And I don't know why this turned into a TED Talk, but it did today, because I feel like someone needs to hear it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important, because we can quip about like taking the hard pills and listening to advice, which is important, but this is, equally and more important to also be kind to yourself.
Definitely. And even if the cards aren't kind to you, be kind to yourself.
Yes, if you get a bad reading and it's an accurate bad reading, sit with it, take a bath, do some meditation, and you can practice self-care and still find something good out of it. I have every faith in you. Yes,
we have faith in you. You can do this. And the cards say that you can't. Maybe take a different approach.
You can always pivot.
Doesn't mean stop. It means pivot.
And on that, yes, that's the thing. And I learned that in my my product management certification, because I am annoying like that. And it's very important in product management to pivot when you're going in the wrong direction. And then you can keep going.
I agree. My CEO has now told me that I am also doing project management now, so.
Yeah. We know how to pivot.
Yeah, it's kind of a requirement. I think it's a requirement for, we both work in marketing, so it's a requirement for that. It's a requirement for anything creative, which I did hear a saying today, which is that marketing is just another art form. And I never saw it that way before, but now I'm obsessed with that concept, and I think it's going to put a fire under my ass just when it comes to marketing in general. And I think that's something too that like we can totally talk about is like book marketing and things like that in another podcast episode. So again, let us know, guys, if you want to hear that. But just coming at it from not a point of, oh, I have to do this thing to market my book, but more so this is another art form that I need to learn to get my book into the hands of the people who need it. And I think that is such a helpful approach, and I'm so surprised I had never heard it before.
Yeah, it's a hard point to reach, because I've talked before on my YouTube channel about how it can be annoying how as an author now you have to be such a like triple quadruple threat that you have to do all the promo, all the marketing for your book, and that can be really tough when you just want to sit down and write and put your book out and then write the next thing. But you can find fun and creativity in that. And as someone, like, as we are both creative people who, you know, write and do design and stuff like that, but we also are in the marketing world, there is a huge connection between those things. And sometimes you have to bring it there yourself, because it is easy to just go, oh, like, this is my day job, or oh, marketing is slimy, or something like that. Like, there are lots of opinions on marketing and ads and sales, and you have to sort of get over that hurdle. And personally, I've been exploring that through writing blogs for my company, which has been really fun, and just bringing things into it that wouldn't necessarily be there, because, you know, you can see a like an e-commerce or a marketing blog start off as like, here are these very technical things, but you can start bringing things in like, oh, the psychology of color and stuff like that, and suddenly it becomes very creative, and it is absolutely an art form.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think too, part of the issue that a lot of authors have with marketing is that they feel like then they're being seen, and a lot of authors prefer to be behind the scenes. It's kind of, you know, the whole thing is that you're behind a keyboard, you know, you're behind the screen, you're not visual. But I think too, like, it's such a funny thing that authors don't like to be out front, because they're putting so much of their heart and their soul, such deep personal things into their words, and then they let other people around the world read them. And it's like, you're sharing part of your soul, but you won't put your face on camera. Like, trust me, putting a part of your heart on the page is a lot more scary than it is to turn on a camera. At least for me. For everybody, you know, obviously it's different, but I think if you see it from that kind of light, then you're like, oh no, this is much easier.
Yeah, for me it worked in tandem, and this whole thing is just such an interesting concept to explore, this, you know, relation to how writing is such a solitary thing and introverted in many cases, but also, you know, these days many of us are putting ourselves out on YouTube and podcasts and educational platforms and stuff like that. For me, I grew up probably up until like my, I don't know, mid-20s, I was saying I'm a behind the camera person, because for a while I wanted to do directing, like in film, and I was always, I'm the behind the camera person. And once I started pushing myself out there and trying to get sort of, because I knew this was something I had to learn how to do if I really wanted to get out into the world and promote the work that I was doing and be seen and make connections. Once I started doing that, the critique again and the writing kind of became easier, because I was less afraid. So you just sort of have to keep pushing yourself in this world.
Yeah, pushing yourself, definitely. And to kind of bring it back to the topic at hand too, like, I would find tarot with marketing so interesting.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole like tarot marketing workshop. I'm sure of it.
Oh yeah, that'd be so fun. And I think it's so interesting too, because like, in that case, you could be like, oh, let me do a reading for how my marketing is going to go. Let me do a, you know, like the tarot cards for my characters and commission art for them. Let me make a deck. Like, you know, I feel like there's so many things, and I'm barely scratching the surface of what you could do with that. But I think it's really interesting. We definitely have to talk more on that concept and develop it a little bit more.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that this could be a sort of multi-part discussion, because once you start talking about tarot, it just goes on and on and on, and can apply to like every single facet of life. One of the interesting ways, before we sort of get back to tips on how you can use it in writing specifically, and combining marketing, I work for a haunted company haunted tour company doing their social media, and I implemented a thing where I do a tarot draw once a week for our community. So actually I have one coming out today because it's Sunday. So Sunday I have it come out at night, and it's like, okay, so this is your card for the week, and I give people a a little insight. I take a nice photo of it. I'm like, this is our collective card, and you can look at it or not, and it's kind of a fun thing to do. So and it's actually applied to my life many times, because at first I was like, well, this is all right, but there are so many people I'm applying it to, it can't possibly work, but it tends to work for me.
You know, if it's okay, I think I might actually steal that idea a little bit, because I would love to implement it in my weekly vlogs, which they're more like bi-weekly vlogs at this point, but I'm trying to make them weekly. But weekly vlogs with a weekly tarot pull would be so fun. So I'm gonna pluck that idea from your brain a little bit.
Yeah, feel free, because people enjoy it, and I've had some do feedback like, this was so accurate, or this really helped me go into the week feeling positive, and stuff like that. So it's just a nice little thing to give people socially.
Yeah, I think too, just including people in your practice for, you know, whatever it is witchy that you do or spiritual that you do is so interesting, because you can open up people's minds and make them realize like, oh, I was really skeptical about tarot, but then I, you know, was watching your weekly tarot polls and I realized they were really accurate for my life, and, you know, now I'm shook. And I think the same thing with astrology, or like, I know there's Queen Herbie, she does like aura cleanses online, and people feel like so good after watching them. And it could totally be, you know, placebo or whatever scientific term you want to, you know, slap onto it.
Sure.
But regardless of whether or not you believe in it or not, if it's helping people, that is so fucking crucial and so important, because you don't have to believe in it, but if it helps you, if it helps somebody else, then like that's 100% what's the most important thing.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily, like, the process doesn't necessarily matter. If it is helping you, it has helped you. You don't have to dig into it and go, how exactly did it do this? Let's pick it apart. It just, you know, look at it, it helps you, good.
Yeah, it can literally be that simple.
Yeah. I think as humans, we have the tendency to overthink, and as writers as well. So sometimes you can just go with it.
Yeah, it's okay to go with the flow. That could be a whole other episode. Yeah. But I think we both probably struggle with going with the flow, so we probably aren't the best people to talk about it.
I was gonna say the title would be "Control Freaks Tell You How to Go with the Flow."
If you want to see that next, let us know. We'll probably do it.
Do as I say. Do as I say, not as I do.
100%.
It's kind of cool though what you said about tarot sometimes popping up and just you're like, oh, that's impactful, because I had some big events happening in my life just with friends and loved ones in the last week, and one of the people who was involved, they sent me this tarot reading that had come out like on the day that this was happening, and it applied to every single person who was involved in our group at the time, and we were all just like, what is happening? There's like something cosmic going on here. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I think too there's definitely a parallel, and there's a lot of things that'll cross over in tarot and then in astrology. So for those who are listening and watching, we're currently filming this ahead of time in August. So there is currently Venus retrograde, as well as the shadow period for Mercury retrograde at the same time. Yeah. And so and we just got out of Lionsgate. Don't forget that. Yes, we cannot forget that either. So there's a whole lot of cosmic energy happening, and the tarot, I feel like, is reflecting that for a lot of people who are getting readings right now, and for their astrology is all just generally fucked up. I mean, literally outside my window right now is like a hurricane in California. So I'm probably going to look back and be like, no, it wasn't that bad after, you know, this episode is out in, you know, like October. But yeah, everything is real nice and fun right now, you know? Yeah, it's a lot. It's just like, I feel like we keep getting slammed. It's funny because my mom and I will usually do readings around the same time, and she and I are very connected, and she'll sort of say to me like, oh, don't do a reading on the new moon. Like, this is a full moon thing. You want to do a reading going into sort of a new period when things are at their, you know, their most tense, and you're going to know how you're going into this next phase. You don't necessarily need to do that at the new moon, because you're just sort of setting intentions and you're seeing how things go, and you want to see more at the end, like, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? But this past new moon that we had, we were both like, no, we're doing it.
and it was very accurate and very intense. So sometimes that new moon reading is a good idea. So we are going to do our tarot pulls now. We're going to do ones for each other and then for the podcast as a whole. So I've shuffled my deck. I'm ready to go. And we're doing past, present, and future. So for past, Jenna, we have the Knight of Cups. Present, we have the Seven of Pentacles. And future, we've got the Six of Pentacles. I always find it interesting when I see multiples like that.
That happens to me a lot in readings people do for me.
Yeah.
I'll get like all major arcana, or I'll get like all swords or all pentacles.
Okay, so I think maybe it's working then. If I'm pulling things that you usually get, maybe my deck is being good. So let me just see here. Yeah, like I was saying, this is something I really want to work on, is just getting better at memorizing the cards. So I'm going to be doing more pulls, and this is very good practice for me. And but I'm also just like, I'm terrible at memorizing things, so that's also a problem with me.
Same. I barely remember my own name.
Yeah, same. Also, it doesn't help that, like I said, I use 2 decks, right? So I have the Hermetic Tarot deck, and then I also have the Druidic book, and some of the names are different, so I'll just be looking for something, like, forever. So for the Hermetic deck, you have the Knight of Cups, and for the Druid, it's Princes, I believe, which is very different. Okay, so your past is, and none of these are reversed either, so these are all just like straight up, which generally is a bit more positive, so that's a good thing. So in your past, you've got idealistic, empathetic, romantic. You are someone you know may be following their heart and their romantic dreams and the challenges to avoid the pitfalls of illusion and glamour. It is also hard to act when so much of your attention is in the world of dreams. And so you may be experiencing a conflict between what you feel in your heart and how you need to take action in the world. So that would be what you recently experienced and what you are past now. I don't know if that resonates. Yeah. Okay. So. Oh yeah, for sure. We have 2 cameras going here, so I'm going to do a double one so you can see. Yeah, this deck is nice, and it matches my backdrop really well too. So where you are in the present is the Seven of Pentacles, which is bearing fruit, harvesting, and clearing, which is you can now start to take a break and appreciate the results of all your hard work and your effort. Often we spend so much time trying to reach our goals or just cope with life that we barely pause to just enjoy what we have achieved. It's just as a farmer might take pleasure in their harvest, so we can gain a deep satisfaction in knowing that our work is bearing fruit. Whether it's a relationship, a project, or a business that you've been nurturing, it has likely reached a stage where it can grow by itself and you can relax a little bit.
That is like scary accurate.
Yeah. I get cards like that all the time telling me to chill out.
Well, I think this is more like present as like I am chilling out, and I think that's for 2 reasons. Is one, I'm supposed to get a raise, so if I don't have it by the time this episode goes out in October, I will leave a little note that said I didn't get it. But for right now, I'm supposed to get a raise at my day job. And then 2, I started on antidepressants, so I am super chill all the time now. Because my doctor was literally like, I was like, yeah, I have this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. And they're like, you realize that's all symptoms of chronic stress? And I was like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. And they're like, here, I'm going to put you on some Prozac for your depression, OCD, and your stress. Let me know how it feels in a month. And I've just been like, hi.
Oh, that's awesome. No, it's so good when you can find the right mix for that stuff.
Yeah, and I was like, it's first try on a drug. I'm probably going to hate it. And I've just been like, relaxed and able to do things like at a normal pace and not stress, and a lot of those symptoms that I talked to my doctor about have already gone away. I'm actually losing weight too because I'm not like stress eating, and so I'm like all around feeling happy, energized, and just like able to bask in the fruit of my hard work and effort and the drugs.
Oh, that's so great. Like I have a lot of friends who are dealing with therapy and trying different drugs and stuff, and it can be so hard to find the right one. So to get that like on the first go, that's awesome, and I'm so glad that you were able to do that.
Yeah, me too, because the last time I was on a prescription, it was for my chronic migraines, which is another symptom of stress. And what was it, last month I was in the, or I think it was last month, I was in the ER from a migraine that lasted a week and everything like that, but I was on migraine meds a couple years ago, and I OD'd on them twice. So it was not a fun time. Yeah, but this time I got extremely lucky.
Well, I remember you making those posts last month, and I was just like, oh my god, what is going on? I was so afraid for you. It's like, this is intense.
That's when I was like, there's something wrong, because I started like, when there was like a really stressful personal situation that was happening, and every single time I was talking about it, I would start getting really, really hot, and I would start getting like black dots, and I would faint. And so my body literally, if it gets too stressed now, just like shuts down. And because I've had a concussion in the past, if I fall, I literally can like die if I hit my head again. So it's like, it's really scary and something that I need to take really seriously. So I finally went and saw my doctor and, you know, told her that whole situation that was happening, and then a couple other symptoms and stuff. And she was like, yeah, no, you have chronic stress on top of your depression and OCD, which is, they just trigger each other in a nice big triangle, because you're stressed, which triggers your depression, which triggers your OCD triggers your stress, which triggers your depression. Like, there's no winning here. You need some drugs.
Yeah. I recently hit a wall in the last week, which we've, you know, talked about personally, and those things really do just trigger each other over and over again. And I've never like talked to anyone about it, because I tend to sort of get past it on my own, and I'm one of those people who's just sort of like, let's just keep charging ahead. But, you know, at some point, like, having witnessed how burnout affected me, which is something we're also going to talk about, I think, in our next episode, it can be tricky and it can be hard to acknowledge also if you're an overachiever and someone who's sort of obsessive about everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and I feel like we both fall into that category of just being overachievers who want to be self-sufficient and rely on ourselves kind of thing. But you know, it comes to a point where like you have to be open and, you know, talk to other people or and ask for help and all those things, and that's some point that like every person who deals with that has to go through. And I think we're both on that journey together kind of thing.
It seems like it, like we're kind of at a similar place.
Yeah, because we're the same person, weirdly enough.
Apparently. It's so funny, just since, you know, randomly reaching, like when you posted the thing about doing a podcast, and I just reached out, and ever since then it's like, oh, this is the same, and this is the same, and this is the same. It's very cool. So do you want to know what's in your future? All right. Oh, actually, first I'll show you the card, your present card. There we go. I'll show my other camera too. Okay, so we are still in Pentacles. Now we're in the Six of Pentacles, which is the Lord of Material Success. So that sounds good. Which we have generosity, patronage, and gifts. In accordance with the principle of the Wiccan law of threefold return, the harvest of our thoughts, feelings, or actions frequently yields far more than imagined. The practical use of magic is based on an understanding of this law of the returning tide. The magician consciously sows seeds of love, healing, and generosity without thought of personal gain, knowing that over time, part of that harvest will go towards creating the optimal conditions for their own fulfillment. It is possible that you are now experiencing such a beneficial time. This card often indicates the process of giving or receiving benefits. You may be the one harvesting gain, and you could be in receipt of patronage or of gifts, generosity, financial, or other assistance, or you could be the one doing the giving. You might be involved in a philanthropic project, or you could be sharing profits or completing a settlement. Either way, there's a sense of balance and fairness. A benefactor may have entered your life, or you may find yourself dealing with someone who is generous but restrained in their giving, though justly so. The card can refer not only to money, but also to work and your material and social life, suggesting good job prospects and good company.
Sick. You know what that means? Everyone should join my Patreon.
Yeah. Do it. Perfect.
Oh no, but that's cool though. Yeah, that's one of the more positive readings that I've got. So I love your deck. Thank you, deck.
It's a good deck.
I mean, I feel like too a lot of my just things that obviously like this podcast and other things like that coming up are just like very much harvesting, the fruit of hard labor and, things have kind of gone hermit mode to get accomplished. So hopefully that means a lot of book writing and a lot of, raise, looking at you, boss.
Yeah.
And people joining my Patreon.
Yes.
Just a little promo.
The cards told you to do it.
What?
The cards told them to join.
The cards are telling you to join the Patreon.
And this is one of those cases where you should absolutely listen to them.
The card said. It wasn't me. It was the cards.
Yeah. Can't we're not shilling. The cards are shilling.
All right, first card we have here is Five of Wands reversed. So this is for the past.
Okay.
So let's see here what it has to say. Five of Wands reversed is compromise, peace, harmony, resolution, conflict avoidance. So upright, it would usually mean it means bickering, but still deeply caring for each other, and a resolution to their strife only comes from good communication. Reversed is a lot of compromise and avoiding conflict to keep the peace.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying not to say too much to like add anything. But yeah,
Okay. I'm thinking maybe I have my deck. Oh, okay. They're all reversed. For you, it was all upright. Yours are all reversed.
Oh God. Oh no. Let me just say this has been a very interesting time, like very recently interesting. So that's why I'm like, oh no, what are we gonna have? So which one's my present?
Okay. Marks a new beginning, a reason to drink and be merry and open up to subconscious feelings. That's what it would mean if it was right side up. It's reversed though, so it means relationship problems, depression, sadness, creative block, and repression. Mine were so happy. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. I'll say something after. Let's just get it all out.
I'm so sorry. The future is Wheel of Fortune reversed.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny that you say that. Oh, I have things to say after this.
Oh, okay. Well, if it was upright, it means endlessly turning, spun by the gods. What was once luck is now misfortune. What was hopeless is now joyous. These acts may seem random, but all fates are part of an interconnected web of repercussions. Reverse means bad luck, a lack of control, the past, misery, and disappointment.
So don't feel bad, because I have an opinion on this. Those like larger readings that I do. The really funny thing is I did this on the new moon, and my what is yet to come was actually Wheel of Fortune, not reversed. So that's interesting that we have both of those. I feel like I'm kind of in a period right now where there was a brief window where I was sort of talking to a lot of people about things that were going on in my life. And I mean, obviously the cards are above it all. They see all, but at the same time, like, this is the feeling I'm getting about it. I went through a period where I was like learning to lean on friends and family quite a bit, sort of telling close friends a lot of things. And coming out of it, it's been like hitting a wall and like, having some whiplash where I've been absorbing it more and making it more personal again. And it almost feels like the cards haven't quite hit that whiplash yet in your reading, if you know what I mean, where it's like we're almost there and we're still trying to catch up and there's still some stuff we're figuring out. So honestly, like that's how I look at it, and it's funny because it's very accurate but in different ways, right? And like you have to know how to interpret those bad ones, and sometimes it's funny and it's just like, yep, let's go. Yeah, sometimes you have to go through it. And look, yours, yeah, it's funny. We were talking, my mom messaged me. She always lets me know when there's a retrograde coming up, and sometimes I'm like, Mom, why did you tell me that? And you know, you're not supposed to travel, you're not supposed to do new things, you're not supposed to, you know, deal with technology or sign contracts. And what do I have coming up for this retrograde? I'm going camping for the first time. I'm going to an overnight music festival for the first time with my friend who has been breaking all of her electronics inadvertently for the past month, where there will not be like reasonable Wi-Fi, and I've been trying to reach out being like, okay, where can I get Wi-Fi so I can sort of like stay in touch with my partner and stuff. And then the weekend after that, I'm going to a convention in a different city where I will have to be like volunteering and signing on for stuff. Like it's everything you're not supposed to do in retrograde. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes.
Well, R.I.P. Holly. I'll have to find a new host.
Hey, no, your good reading is going to outweigh all of my stuff in the next few weeks. That's what we're going to go with.
Yes, I will share some of my apparently prosperity with you.
Exactly. I mean, it's to do with your projects, and this is one of your projects, so we're good.
Yes. So everything else in your life is going to fall apart except for this podcast, apparently. Which is why you guys should subscribe and follow us for more.
Yes, like, subscribe, leave us comments, tell me it's all going to be okay. Now, I'm very curious to see how this goes when we draw cards for the podcast itself. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be like, everything's actually on fire?
Oh, no.
It's fine. You're like, it's fine. It's fine.
Please, Jack, be okay. I love you.
Yes, we're pouring all the love into the deck. This podcast will be just so fulfilling and beautiful, and one of the cards already came out, and everybody's going to love it. No hate comments ever.
Exactly. Alright.
Ooh.
Two other cards chose themselves.
Always cool when that happens.
Alright. Well, I got 3 cards again, but we don't really have a past to go based off of for this podcast.
A very recent past.
Yeah, the last, like, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So what, we just read this as, like, just the future?
Yeah, I mean, we could glance at the past and see what it's saying, because that might be kind of interesting just to see, because it might apply to, like, some things in our, you know, like, related professional past, that sort of thing. Because, I mean, we're both from the YouTube realm and stuff like that, and there are certain things that we have in common that have funneled into us doing this podcast in the first place, so
Why not?
why not?
Sure. Okay, so past, present, future.
Yeah. And since this is sort of a shared reading, we could alternate. So we can both do past and then, okay. So for the past, I have the 4 of Swords reversed. And one of the reasons I like this deck, actually, is it has this symbol. It's kind of like a Tudor rose. And as we've been talking about tattoos, I have a Tudor rose on my wrist that's very difficult to show off because of how my skin moves, but it's one of the reasons I like that deck, which I didn't even find out till I opened it after I purchased it. Show this here. So, 4 of Swords reversed is generally you have retreat, rest, and solace, but this is going to be the opposite. So, a period of isolation ends, confinement is over. You may be recovering from an illness or entering back into an active life. It's auspicious to receive this card reversed if you're experiencing financial losses, illness, or personal difficulties since it suggests that with care and attention, you can emerge successfully from them. So I think that's kind of cool, actually, because I don't know if it applies to you, like if you relate to it at all, but I relate to that because I started my YouTube channel during the Rona, which was a sort of worldwide period of illness, and I found that it was a very solitary thing, and as I've come out of that, I've been doing more collaborations and things like this, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I feel like it makes sense for me too, because I've definitely had like a long health journey, and I actually stopped doing YouTube, I think, during the majority of the pandemic, just because it was very like depressing, isolated time, like the card said. So it very much feels like they're talking about like the Rona times, when it comes to that card. And it's so fun you got swords, because I got 2 of swords upright.
Okay.
For past as well. So for that
That's
one,
cool.
it represents being stuck between hard choices. Is not easy and cannot be made. Your decisions are not easy and cannot be made blindly. It calls for self-reflection. Things can only remain balanced for so long before a move must be made. So facing fears, a stalemate, denial, opposition, a precarious position.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of that in the past few years. A lot of precarious things and decisions to be made, and some big life changes and choices. So that also I relate to that too. So for present, I have the King of Pentacles, who's the Prince of the Chariot of Earth, which sounds pretty intense. There you go. Yes. Yeah, he's very fancy. So he is generous, patient, and pragmatic. If not referring to a person, it may indicate the need to care for your body, your finances or possessions, or your land or property. Drawing this card in a reading may point to your relationship with the land and the earth, and surrounding cards may suggest how to develop this. Alternatively, it may suggest you need to treat yourself to some sensual pleasures. Oh, no. Wait, I got the wrong one. I was like, that makes no sense. I'm like, that doesn't even seem like pentacles. No, I grabbed the wrong page. I'm going to edit that. No, this makes more sense. I love when you get it and you're like, no. So, King of Pentacles is responsible, steadfast, and productive. See, this is the peril of having a different book to your cards. You get mixed up on the different numbers and the pictures and stuff. So if the card does not represent a person, it can suggest that you will experience an improvement in your finances or material circumstances. It can also indicate the steady progress and success of a business project or career. In other circumstances, the card might symbolize a traditional, established organization or profession. So it seems like we're presently on a good track as far as my deck is saying, which makes a lot more sense than experiencing pleasures.
Yeah, I was like, is it saying treat ourselves? We've barely done any work on this.
You're like, okay, but...
Like, I could. I know, my fiance's over there eating chocolate right now.
Oh my god.
I'm talking. I can't eat chocolate right now. I'm just so
Maybe
thirsty.
Later.
Yeah, later. Later I'll treat myself while also being productive.
Yeah, that was just a sign from the universe being like, this isn't the card, but you should do this anyway.
Yeah. It's like, put the chocolate down.
Yeah.
All right, so for mine, I got 5 of coins.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So let's flip through this little book. 5 of coins. Alrighty. So it's upright, which represents financial hardship and feeling left in the cold. That don't make sense compared to your card.
Oh no.
People need your help, but no one is willing to help. Struggling alone despite her proximity to a force that could potentially help her. Recession, adversity, isolation, unemployment, ruin.
So we're gonna do well, but we're gonna have haters. That's my prediction.
Make the prediction come through. Just hate us. Just hate us.
Yeah. Watch us and hate us, and then it's true, and it's okay. We'll put up with it. Remember, we can take criticism.
Yes. Hate watch us and get us monetized.
Exactly. That's the best way to look at it.
Yes.
So,
if that actually happens, I'm going to be shook.
That will be really funny. I kind of can't wait. So my future one is kind of similar, unfortunately, to that one, but we'll see what yours is. I have the Empress, who's also the lady in the Druidic deck, but she is reversed. And so that, like, generally she's a card that brings, you know, abundance and creativity and beauty, which sounds really nice. But reversed, repressed feelings, rationality. Well, rationality isn't that bad in my opinion. But unfortunately, creative blocks as well. So finding the lady reversed in a reading may indicate that you're taking or need to take a calm and rational approach to any challenge in your life. Alternatively, the interpretation may not be so positive, suggesting instead that you are suppressing your feelings and in particular your sexuality. So sexuality is going to come out in the future somehow. I don't know how. I mean, I've already come out, so we'll see. Traditionally, the reversed Traditionally, the reverse card is said to indicate problems of impotence or infertility. Are either of us trying to be fertile right now? I'm definitely not. Not ever for me. So the issue may not revolve around physical infertility, but around blockages or problems that disrupt your ability to be creative and effective in the world. This may result in a lack of abundance or in your experiencing poverty and indicate a need to explore your relationship both to the creative process and more generally towards the goddess and the feminine as it manifests in your life. So I don't know, for that one, like, it sounds negative when you're doing a creative venture, but at the same time, a lot of that just resonates with me as the kind of classic creative process of like trying to work through it and evolve and things like that, and the obstacles you come up against. I don't know if that's how you sort of feel it.
Yeah, I definitely felt like writer's block, and maybe some block with like coming up with topics. So if anyone wants to help us with that, and comment down below the topics you'd like us to talk about. You can help with this dark future that the cards are telling us about.
Oh. Okay, sorry. That recorded, but my earbuds blinked out for a second. I think they're trying to die. But it's okay. We're back. We're almost done. Yeah.
I got another coins one, so 10 of coins. Upright. Okay. So let's see what that has to say. Hopefully it's a little bit better for our future. Okay, it says, represents the hard-earned rewards of a difficult venture. Celebrates the lineage that benefits from its hard work. The hardships he once endured allow him to appreciate his good fortune and retire surrounded by his loved ones. Upright is inheritance, ancestry, pensions, settling down, financial stability. These cards are reversed of each other?
I think that's really cool. I think it says so much. I'm going to wind up thinking on this more after we record. It just seems very realistic. You know, it's like our decks are talking to each other and being like, this could be good, but, you know, you're going to have creative blocks and you're going to have to go through these processes and you're going to have to, like, work together. And especially given the fact that the past ones were so accurate for both of us, I feel like that said a lot. And then for them to be reverse of each other in both, like, that was just a very synchronistic reading of, like, the duality we talked about before of, you know, darkness and light and the god and goddess and good and bad. Like, with any creative venture, you're going to have troubles, but you're going to have prosperity as well. So I think that that's a really realistic and positive outlook for the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I would trust it less if it was like, the future's full of abundance and that's all there is. Like, you know? So it is interesting that it's kind of like, we'll, you know, like you said, we'll work together, we'll figure out stuff together, we'll, you know, develop and get to know each other better as we're doing this podcast, and we'll do problem solving, and, you know, there might be financial lows, highs, figuring out, you know, if we get monetized thanks to you guys, you know, what we're doing with that, and all of those fun things. So, I mean, I'm excited for the future of this podcast and talking to you more and everything in general. So, yeah, it very much seems like we have paths in front of us and just matters the paths that we take. And I think that's, in the end, the whole meaning of tarot in general is, you have different paths, different options, but in the end, it's still your choice of what you want to do and the story that you want to write for your own life.
Oh, exactly. And I think that we're very much up to whatever creative challenges are ahead. And these were kind of perfect readings just to show what we've been talking about and wrap this up in a neat little bow, in my opinion. You got some craziness, some positivity, and just some real life advice.
Yeah, I definitely think that it was meant to be.
Oh, and he froze for me.
Oh.
It went so long.
I'm here.
Oh, did I freeze? Hang on. Okay, I can hear you. I can't. Oh, there we go. There. Okay. All right. So since our technology, yes, when our technology starts to fail, that's when it's time to put it down and do something else for a bit.
Well, I think too we ended up on some really great points, and ending it with the future of the podcast is a really great full circle moment.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, I know it's only our second episode, but it's my favorite one so far. So moving forward, I think we're gonna have a lot more awesome conversations. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully everyone listening and watching gets something out of this as well. And I mean, let us know about your own tarot experiences and what you think about our readings and stuff like that, because we will very much enjoy hearing what you have to say.
Yes, please do. And if you guys have any recommendations for episodes you want to see in the future, please let us know. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, listen to us on all the different platforms of your choice and choosing, and feel free to follow along for this path of this podcast and this journey that we're going on together in the writing craft.
And never buy a cheap tarot deck. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for listening.